Good afternoon and welcome back to another live episode of Red Tinted Glasses. We are live across our Twitter page at RTG_podcast and of course on our YouTube page, Colin, where we are closing in on 1,000 subscribers very quickly. I think just 14 to go. I wonder if we can get that before Sunday or will we get that before Boris goes?
I know my goal is going to be before the league season starts, but to be fair, we'll take any of those. If it's before Boris goes, it might be a matter of minutes, hours, maybe a push.
Yeah, thanks for those that are tuning into this rather than the potential resignation speech. But during this episode, we're going to be looking back at the Dons in Spain. I don't know if you've heard, that's where the pre-season trip was. And we'll look at the ins and outs. Not that there's been many, but of course there might be a high-profile one soon enough. Afternoon, Prime Minister. Callum will give us his thoughts on last night's 7-1 victory over Brechin City, which I'm sure he very much enjoyed. And I'm joined by Colin Byiers from the Blue Toon podcast to look ahead to Sunday's trip to Peterhead, where we open our Premier Sports Cup campaign. So, Callum, let's first of all take a look at that trip to Spain. You know, warm weather training, but a good opportunity for the team to bond. I think Johnny Hayes saying after last night's game anyway that the team spirit in the camp is certainly very high, just maybe proving the worth of the trip.
I think so. There was some questions over what was the need, sort of waste of money kind of thing being branded about before they went away. But we mentioned it prior to the show, and obviously what Johnny Hayes said and Jim Goodwin's come out and said as well. The sort of bonding they can get together when it's just them away training together for a week. And also, I suppose the intensity too, because training 2-3 times a day, maybe, as well as, playing that bounce game in such a heat can obviously build the fitness levels massively. And most importantly, maybe keep Ramirez's tan sticking around for a little bit too.
Yeah, well, there's always got to be something with Aberdeen and a strong tan during pre-season. But we did, as you mentioned, have that bounce game supposed to be behind closed doors, so much so that the Aberdeen admin doesn't want to mention that we did play in that game, but is quite happy to mention that we were in Spain. I think he picked up on the fact that we were loving the in Spain reference during the final training session in Spain. But it was a 1-1 draw that we played out with St Johnstone behind closed doors. Thanks very much to Neil Ross for providing us with the updates that we could provide to you, because as we said, the Aberdeen admin was very reluctant to reference the game at all. But Bojan Miovski got his first goal for the club, but unfortunately has not been able to join the team in Scotland. We'll wait to see if he'll join up with the squad ahead of Sunday, although if it's anything to judge by Yilba Ramadani's absence, we could be waiting a while.
I think so, but good to hear that he got off the mark, and it was good that at least he got involved not only in the training but in that bounce game as well. Chance for him to sort of meet the rest of the squad, the rest of the staff before eventually getting over here, and also very, very good early signs. That's not exciting me beyond belief that he got on the score sheet, even though it was only a bounce game and a friendly. And despite the fact it finished 1-1, I think it's still a good test over there again with the conditions and things against decent opposition. But I do have some concerns over how long it's taken to get these boys over. Things that obviously out of the club's hands, but it's just a little bit frustrating. And who knows eventually before they will actually be able to join up with the team and get involved in matches.
Yeah, I think the worst one for Ramadani is the fact that he's got that visa approved. It's just he's waiting on his passport to come back. But 29 days after we announced the signing, he's not been able to meet or train with his new teammates. So definitely a disappointing one on that front. But I suppose one thing to take away, and we're going to come on to last night's game shortly, was the interview that Jim Goodwin did at the end of the trip to Spain, was that Jack Milne and Mason Hancock had maybe given him a bit of a headache after the trip. And obviously you saw Mason play last night, but I suppose these trips do offer up the opportunities for younger players, fringe players, to impress the manager in training in these close environments and really give Jim something to think about as we approach the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, a good way of integrating them with the squad, like any new signings as well, where basically they've got no option but to, get to know people. But that can absolutely only be a good thing. And then certainly Mason Hancock definitely impressed me last night as well in the game. So it's encouraging, especially if, you might look at it in terms of first team defenders, we might still be lacking perhaps in that left back spot, or maybe centre back cover too. But it's certainly only a good thing that they are, proving their worth, and they're also still very, very young with a lot of time to develop, a lot more experience to gain as well. So it's encouraging signs, absolutely.
Yeah, and it just shows, Mason was this time last week when we were speaking had joined our Arbroath for a matter of hours before obviously being recalled due to Jack McKenzie's injury, and by all accounts, judging from what you said before we came live today and people tweeting last night, that he seemed to give a good account of himself, and I think he had the assist for Vinny's first goal.
I think so. Yeah, my recollection of there's so many goals that hard to keep track of. But no, he was really, really good, not only defensively but going forward as well. It really impressed me. Plenty of energy getting up and down that left hand side, and I was really, really impressed. And we've got three sort of quite young, good left backs that are all now competing for spots. So I did wonder sort of how much he would actually be involved when that loan was pulled with Arbroath. But going by last night, certainly in the Premier Sports Group stages games, I would absolutely be happy for him to go on and stake his claim, because he was really, really impressive. Not only sort of technically and defensively, but physically as well. Looks sort of, sometimes you see kids coming in. I think you saw that when Dylan Lobban came on. Obviously, a few years age difference, but you see them, they still don't look quite ready to be playing sort of first team football against fully grown men. But Mason Hancock looks ready. Obviously, maybe not the opposition was fantastic, but they're all fully grown, experienced men.
Yeah, I think, I suppose we'll come on to it. So Aberdeen returning from Spain, making the short trip to Glebe Park last night, where the Dons ran out 7-1 victors. Goals from Christian Ramirez, Vicente Bissauen with a double, Matty Kennedy, Johnny Hayes, Liam Harvey and Marley Watkins also grabbing goals. Harvey, of course, with his first senior goal for the Dons. Callum, you were there. As I said, we've got to, given the opposition it was played, maybe not get carried away. Not looking at anyone in particular, of course. But what was your take from the game last night? I'll give you the floor, given you were, of course, present.
This is always a concern. First of all, I would say it was very much worth the 2 trains and a lift from Arbroath then I had to get travelling up from Kirkcaldy. But I thought we were impressive. You do have to take, obviously, the opposition into consideration, which is one thing I did sort of think about last night. Why are we not playing maybe slightly better opposition? You got sort of Cove Rangers, Arbroath, that you could maybe be providing more of a test. But at the same time, I suppose all that money Brechin got will probably last them and keep them afloat for quite a while, given the good turnout. But I thought we looked really, really good. Certainly going forward, it looked a lot more sort of free flowing, I suppose you can maybe say. We're given last season how much it was coming back. We were going forward, getting towards their box, turning back, recycling it. It was looked a lot better. I looked a lot more fluid, absolutely, and also actually taking chances as well, which was really, really bizarre. And certainly, I think it would be an improvement on the Bucky game too. In terms of defensively, I mean, Brechin, didn't cause too many problems, obviously. However, it looked good until we swapped the whole back four, and then putting them in mid-game, well, it caused a little bit of chaos, and I think Brechin sort of sensed that, but we were very, very impressive. The little muscle boy was absolutely excellent. I'm really, really excited to see how he does this season with a full pre-season under his back. Marley Watkins came on and showed a few nice touches as well. Dante Polvara, good range of passing. And there too. Johnny Hayes playing centre mid was a bit bizarre. But certainly did a shift, I suppose, without Barron, Ferguson, Ramadani as well. He certainly did okay. We were decent. Anthony Stewart doesn't look the quickest, but certainly I think he makes up for it in terms of his defensive awareness, his positioning. Looked really, really good. Liam Scales, very, very capable of coming out from the back with the ball. That was encouraging. Absolutely. Mason Hancock was good. Jack Milne, I thought, when he came on, certainly coming out from the back, he was really, really good on the ball. looked very, very comfortable. So all round, I was rather impressed. Obviously, Kelleroos didn't get tested, essentially, so can't really give too much on that. But considering the opposition, to be honest, knowing Aberdeen, I thought we were maybe going to go in there 2-0, 3-0 at a push. I'm glad we blew them away. It was a good run out, and they look sharp, in all honesty. They look very, very fit. So I think the pre-season in Spain has definitely helped that.
Yeah, lots of you to keep our Twitter page updated on last night. And of course, if you are wanting to see the goals from last night's game, why not after this episode head over to our Twitter page at RTG_podcast, because one of our followers on Twitter, Neil Davidson, kindly videoed all the goals and sent them to us on Twitter. So we've retweeted those tweets from Neil. So head over to our Twitter page where you can see the goals if you're wanting to catch up on the action from last night's win. But Callum, obviously, I've listened to what you've had to say and made a few notes based on that, and already had some stuff kind of written down to discuss. One of the points was, of course, Anthony Stewart captaining the side last night. Jim Goodwin yet to announce who the new captain is going to be. You mentioned there he maybe wasn't the quickest, but you know, Keith Monroe was at the game last night, and he commented to me how tall Anthony Stewart actually looked. Maybe not the 5'10" that's been reported, but also how vocal he was throughout the game, marshalling the defense very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think marshalling the defense is certainly the right way to describe it. We noticed it was one of the benefits of being so close to the pitcher and things like that. He wasn't sort of like yelling and barking at people, but he was sort of coaching people through the game. Certainly, Jaden Richardson on his right hand side. At one point, Jaden Richardson bombed forward and didn't quite get back in time. And Anthony Stewart was right, and Jaden Richardson was explaining that essentially. And Anthony Stewart was saying, "Yeah, that's all well and good, but your job basically, you're a defender, so you can't leave a man free regardless." And I thought that was really, really good, because some people won't react well to sort of being barked at and just yelled at completely, whereas he was, giving advice, coaching them through it, which I thought was really, really impressive. And his awareness, his positioning was excellent, and was interesting. He was wearing his captain's armband rather than obviously Ross McCrory, who also started, which was interesting. But on that evidence, I wouldn't be totally against the idea if he gets the armband permanently. Obviously, a very small sample, but I was impressed with him, because obviously with Scales being pretty young, we're bound to have a young left back regardless of who it is, and Jaden Richardson's still very young and inexperienced too. That he seems to be the exactly type of guy we need, and I was very, very impressed. And that's after I think we saw some Wickham fans saying, I remember seeing on Twitter when he signed, that he wasn't necessarily captain material, but I was impressed. I wouldn't be against it.
I think that kind of goes to the point that Jim Goodwin was making when we signed him, that he was looking for that experienced player to come into our defence to help the younger players. And I suppose it's a valid point you make, because whoever takes that left back slot, whether it be Mackenzie, Nguyen or Hancock, maybe based on last night's given Goodwin something to think about, they're going to need an experienced head, as you allude to there. Liam Scales, also not the oldest, and certainly not in terms of match experience, has had much in this in the way. And Jaden Richardson as well, also young, still maybe learning his craft as well. And as you said, Anthony Stewart having to explain that he is a defender, not a roaming forward, as he may like to think at times as well. So good to see that he's not scared to kind of take that responsibility on. I think, there was widely expected that Ross McCrory would be captain this season, but maybe Jim Goodwin's got other ideas, and Anthony Stewart certainly put himself forward as a decent candidate by all accounts.
Certainly, I don't think we're in a bad spot necessarily to have several leaders in that team, several players who can do that sort of role. That's exactly where you want to be, which is maybe where we thought we were last season with Gallagher and Brown. But it's certainly encouraging to have potential candidates as well. And obviously, players miss out games and things like that. To have a few that are capable of doing that role, and doing that role effectively, not just being a player on the park with an armband and not making much of a difference. It's very, very encouraging.
Yeah. So we'll go on to players that impressed last night. Again, obviously, I know it's Brechin City, but by all accounts, it was an encouraging performance last night. Bizawan, I think it's fair to say, will have impressed you, Callum, although I don't think he can do much wrong to not impress you. A very sweet finish for that first one, maybe sweet as sticky toffee pudding.
Wow, that
Suppose we
was good.
have to get that reference in there somehow. Matty Kennedy, Keith was impressed when he was texting me. We spoke about him on last week's show after the Bucky game, about where we see him maybe fitting in. You're maybe more on the backup. I think that's maybe a general consensus amongst most fans, but has, put in some decent performances in pre-season. We'll see how that continues come Sunday. Was there anybody else that stood out for you?
I was quite impressed with Dante Povara's passing range. Overall, to be honest, a very good performance. I think Ramirez, once again, maybe not offering much else other than the goal scoring, but you saw what Adam Rooney was like. If he can still get his head down and grab those goal for us and maybe not be too involved in the link-up play or whatever, that's still absolutely okay. But I think it's a fair assessment on Matty Kennedy. Liam Scales looked very, very good, comfortable on that left side of the defence, certainly stepping out from the back on the ball, and good distribution as well, which is fantastic when if you are wanting to play out from the back in terms of progressing the ball further forward into the more creative players. So other than those mentioned, it was just an all-round good performance. But one thing I forgot to mention earlier in terms of Vicente, he was very, very close to us on the touchline at one point, and he was demanding the ball, didn't get played out to him. I think it was maybe Anthony Stewart on the ball at the time, and I'll paraphrase him. It was, give me the flipping ball, essentially, which is what I absolutely love. He's confident, he's ready and raring to go, and I am super duper excited to see how he does this season.
Yeah, well, definitely, certainly had a bright pre-season. Be interesting to see, as you said, with a full pre-season behind him, how he hits the ground running. And I think we received a tweet today from someone saying we probably need to protect him a bit, because I think defenders will just take to just hoofing him up in the air this season. And I think, judging on his early season form, that might be the only way that some defenders know how to deal with him.
I think that is very, very possible. We've seen it a few times over the years, certainly in that 6-month spell with Madison. That's one that certainly stands out, where clearly was sort of levels above sort of most around him, if not all. So the only way to deal with him was to boot him up in the air. I think that will probably be what happens. We need to protect him. We'll need to get players who'll get in and stick up for him. Not that I think he needs it, because when there was a rough tackle, he was the first one in there in the game last night to shove someone who's, half a foot or more taller than him. But it is something we need to be wary of. Hopefully, he won't receive sort of any serious injuries through it. And he seems to be, although he does like, maybe a little roll around at times, he is the type of guy who will then get up and then still go on and try something regardless of what happens to him, because he knows he's got the ability. So let's hope he keeps that confidence all season round.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there was a physical challenge on Dante Polvara by Ian Davidson, I think, that led to a little bit of a scuffle. I think, is that the one you're maybe referring to?
Yes, it was. That Ian Davidson was an absolute jobber, by the way. There was a few Brechin fans around us. They were saying, I was like, how old is he? 39. And he's got a haircut like that, apparently. Ridiculous.
Yeah. I very much enjoyed his meltdowns in the Highland League last season. A player who obviously thinks he's better than that standard, but Brechin playing to that standard, of course. Obviously, there's been a lot of positives on the forwards. You mentioned Christian Ramirez getting another goal in pre-season. I may be reading too much into this, but I noticed on Instagram that they were celebrating the daughter's birthday early. I was like, oh, are they coming back to Aberdeen, or are they maybe moving somewhere else?
Well, it's not only that, but I also noticed Balmoor posting, it was like some sort of, I don't know, a coffee, we'll say that, for example. And she said, I'm going to miss this, or something like that. Hey, he might be here to stay.
Yeah, not that we're putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5. But how encouraged were you on the attack of Aberdeen in terms of creativity? You said, we showed a bit of a clinical nature. I think the Brechin City Twitter alluded to that the Brechin were showing a lesson in how to finish their chances. Did we have that bit more ruthlessness about us last night that you're maybe encouraged to see taken forward over the coming weeks?
Absolutely. In all honesty, can't think of too many saves the goalkeepers, plural, loved the fact that they brought on that trialist, by the way. He was brilliant, kept a clean sheet, just saying. And they didn't have, too many saves to make. And I think that shows, given, well, we had at least 7 shots on target and found the back of the net. It was certainly encouraging to see us actually taking our chances. We did look a lot better going forward. There wasn't this sort of dilly-dallying, I suppose is the best way to describe it, like there was last season. A little bit more direct, I thought, as well. A little bit more high tempo. It's once again taking the opposition into account, but it's definitely a good sign, and hopefully we can carry that on and keep building up against slightly better opposition in the Premier Sports Cup, leading into that opening game against Celtic.
Yeah, exactly. On the defence, though, the anti-clean sheet ASC reared its head again. David Bates conceding a penalty minutes, I think it was, after coming on. Now, before we go into that, what did you make of the back four that started the game? You alluded to it looked solid enough again, with the greatest of respect to Brechin maybe not testing it. But what were your thoughts on that defence? I think in your summary you said it. Once we changed it, we didn't look the same. Were you happy enough with that back four? Obviously, I think there may be doubt on who starts at left back, but in terms of the other three, were you fairly happy with them?
Yeah, absolutely. There were some questions obviously raised when Jane Richardson signed over his defensive abilities, and after last night, I am none the wiser. To be fair, but certainly looked very, very good getting up and down that right hand side. Well, up, maybe not down that right hand side. But certainly the centre half pairing, definitely that looks like it could be something that's starting to form a partnership, which is obviously frustrating given Liam Scales can't play in the first game of the league. But regardless, they looked good. Their positioning looked decent. And obviously, weren't tested too much. Aerial duels thought they were pretty good too. Mason Hancock at left back was impressive as well. If that is our starting back four going into the game against Peterhead, and who knows how further on it'll take us, but I think I'd be certainly very, very happy with that. They looked good, and when it changed it, I think regardless of David Bates's mistake, I'll maybe make an excuse for him for that penalty. When you change a whole back four in the middle of a game, not even at half time, it's probably going to be a recipe for disaster. Regardless, when you've got two youngsters beside David Bates, who on the left side always looks uncomfortable, plus Connor McLennan at right back, it was always going to be a little bit chaotic. But of the one that you'd think maybe wouldn't make a mistake, logically thinking about experience and things like that, it was exactly the man that did make it, the man you wouldn't have thought. And it was comical, at least. It was value for money.
Yeah, well, that's all these preseason games can be about. There was, I think, a penalty shout just at the beginning of the second half, and Keith mentioned, but obviously David Bates giving away a penalty shortly after coming on, and then hearing that he could have maybe given another one away before the end of the game. Was it just a nervous performance from David Bates, or was there some poor play from us defensively that led to these incidents occurring?
It was pretty poor and chaotic in general, but in terms of David Bates, he did look weirdly nervous. I don't know whether maybe he's a bit anxious about losing his starting spot, etc. Who knows? But regardless, it was chaotic defending. They try to shield the ball out when he could just play the ball for the penalty he actually gave away, and then the second one sort of backing off. I think stuck like a toe in. I don't know if he actually made much contact, but certainly could have potentially been for the one that they didn't get. It's a little bit of concern. I don't know whether it's rust or whatever. I don't know, but it was not good whatsoever, and not confident if he's in that left side of centre back going forward. I would maybe like in that game against Celtic if he shifts over to the right and Anthony Stewart plays on the left hand side. A little bit more of a calmer, cool head, a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, that's I suppose that is going to be the worry for the opening game. Before we move on, I just want to speak about Harvey, who scored his first senior goal for the Dons. I think he had one disallowed as well, if I'm right in saying.
Yeah, I think so. We don't have the best view. No, well, he definitely did, but I don't know. We don't have the best view of it from where we were, basically down the opposite end on the sideline. I think he was probably well offside, and maybe it was going in regardless, but certainly took his goal very well, got in some good positions, despite not being the tallest, physically held his own. I remember him turning Kevin McHattie at one point. Obviously, a player that's been around for quite some time. So I was impressed, and certainly if he carries on with his development, and maybe physically, I think he's probably 17, so he's probably
Mhm.
still got room to grow and fill out as well. Certainly one to keep an eye on. I think it'll be very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think he had a goal disallowed at Bucky as well in that game. But do you think he's maybe a player that would benefit from a season out on loan at a League Two side, maybe League One, um, rather than just sitting in the development squad? Or do you think he could maybe force his way into contention? Obviously, we're still a bit light up top. It,
Yeah.
do you feel he could work his way into Jim Goodwin's plans for the season?
He's showed enough certainly that he could cause problems for certain types of players right now. I think it'll maybe depend on if sort of another striker comes in between now and the end of the window, or maybe it's just depending a lot of getting him in around the squad right now during pre-season to see how he develops with that, and then probably looking towards a loan. And obviously, he can still come back and train if it's a part-time club or whatever. I think that maybe will be beneficial for him because playing games against fully grown men at that age, sometimes obviously it doesn't work out the way people would like to, but it will benefit regardless. They'll either shoot on and develop, or it'll be a good learning curve for them. So I think he
Mhm.
could benefit from that. But right now, whilst there's Premier Sports game, Cup Sports games as well, I've no idea what I just called that competition. By the way, certainly I think worth keeping him around, because he'll be hopefully, if we're comfortable enough, be able to get involved in those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good opportunity for him to get more first team minutes. Um, Interesting to see as well what happens. I guess the point you make about an incoming striker, we'll see if he does depart. But one player that has departed the club on loan this week was Evan Towler, who's headed to Cove Rangers in search of first team minutes. I think that's a good move for Evan. You know, playing high championship. Well, certainly Cove will have ambitions of playing at the top end of that table, but learning alongside experienced defenders as well. You've got Mark Reynolds there, of course, Shea Logan as well. You know, players that you can certainly learn off. And, you know, when you're facing Mitch Megginson and Rory McAllister in training as well, two players that definitely know where the back of the net is, that'll also be a little tough test for him to develop his defensive side.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was a bit surprised actually, given how young he is to go in at Cove at championship
Mm.
level. I don't know how much game time he'll actually get. Honestly, I'm not sure right now. But as you mentioned, in terms of in training and things like that, they're still part time too, so he'll still be able to be
Mhm.
involved with Aberdeen too. Well, it'll be a good learning curve, I think, for Evan Tyler. Still at a very, very young age, and if he can force his way into that starting 11, very, very good level to be playing at. And that can only be a good thing, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's been a very quiet week for once on the transfer front for Aberdeen. But as I said, we are just a few days away from the opening game of the season in terms of competitive football for the club. And ahead of Sunday's trip to Peterhead, I caught up with Colin Byiers from the Blue Toon podcast to get his thoughts on Sunday's game.
Core of 8, 9, 10. Actually, just thinking today, I think we've only done one State of Scottish football together out of the many months that we've been on it, but I think we only did one, and I think it was a Scotland game.
Yeah, that was what I remember. I remember definitely doing a Scotland one. I couldn't remember if we've done one in terms of league as well, but I'm sure we'll be working together more as the season develops on that channel. But we're here to preview Aberdeen's trip north to Peterhead as the Premier Sports group stages get underway this Sunday for both clubs. You're in the Peterhead corner, and it's been quite a tough pre-season, I think it's fair to say, for Peterhead so far this season, Colin. A 1-1 draw with Inverurie Locos, winning on penalties, of course, as part of Elgin's 150th birthday celebrations, losing to Elgin 2-0 in the final of that mini-tournament, and then maybe a chastening defeat to Dundee 4-0 at the weekend. Apologies if that word seems a bit harsh. I know, obviously, since the amount of trialists that played in that game, but is that a concern coming up to this Sunday, that it has been a tough pre-season and you are a bit thin on the ground as well in terms of bodies?
Yeah, I think it's been tougher than what we maybe had anticipated at the tail end of last season, when I think we finished with 6 wins at the last 8, I think it was, towards the end, and we finished the campaign relatively on a good footing. A lot of the players, we thought, if we can keep them for next season, keep the core of 8, 9, 10, we should do well. We actually even had anticipating competing, maybe for a playoff spot. I know it's going to be a tough league with the full-time teams in there, but we've done well, and all of a sudden, 1 leaves, 2 leaves, 3 leaves, 4 leaves, 5 leaves, and then all of a sudden you're going, oh man, we're actual core, if you like, is all disappeared. And I think that's maybe what's caught the club and maybe caught Jim off guard slightly in terms of the ones that have left. And I think that's why we've been left with so many trialists playing in those friendly games. So it has been a bit tougher, I think. The ones that have stayed obviously are fairly decent players and should do well, but when you're playing so many trialists, a week before the league starts, I think that is slightly concerning.
Yeah, and I suppose more concerning or worrying for Peterhead fans is obviously the injury to Andrew McCarthy, ruled out for 6 weeks. So when you're already thin on the ground, and I think we discussed before recording this little segment that you don't even have a goalkeeper signed up as well. Although maybe Aberdeen fans will be hoping that the trialist you played against Dundee features this Sunday, but I think Jim McAnally will have other ideas on signing him on a more permanent basis. But Peterhead have moved to sign Ola Adeyemo from Cove Rangers, strengthening their strike force. And I think Jim's saying that he'll be definitely thrown in at the deep end against Aberdeen, not just in terms of because Peterhead need it, but also to help on his fitness for when your league campaign gets underway as well. Maybe a bit of an unknown for you straight away. Obviously, that signing just announced today, but certainly an area that Peterhead needed to strengthen in.
Yeah, I think it was as an area that, especially in the forward line, we were lacking numbers. We do have Jordan Brown, we do have Russell McLean, although he's been transfer listed and is currently injured as well. So we definitely need someone. It looks as though it's a typical Jim McAnally signing. He likes that big strapping guy up front, just to kind of try and hold the ball up. But he does have a bit of pace about him as well. Good left foot, seemingly as well. I think he only played 15 times last season for Cove, which is understandable given their forward line they had last season with likes of McAllister and McIntosh and Meganson and things like that. So he was always going to struggle. So he's got a point to prove. Yeah, he's probably fitness-wise isn't going to be the best, but what better way to kick on and get a live TV game against Aberdeen at him?
Certainly would be a way to announce yourself to the home faithful, and I think Jim McAnally obviously is going to be in attendance at the Brechin game to get an eye over at Aberdeen and how they maybe look to play on Sunday, but also hoping to maybe get another addition to the squad before Sunday's game. We spoke before recording. You are thin on the ground. You said Jason Brown suspended for the game as well on Sunday. No current goalkeeper signed up. Do you feel it's maybe more than one Peterhead need before the weekend?
I think we're going to need a couple at least. Certainly need, another goalkeeper, or our goalkeeper, I should say. We might get away with one goalkeeper in the entire squad for Sunday and just hope that Heather doesn't get sent off or get injured, and then see what happens after that. But yeah, I think there is another one I think going to be signing from what we've been told as well before the weekend. I think it's going to be another defender. So I think we're going to have plenty of bodies in terms of getting 10 outfield players. We might only have maybe 1 or 2 on the bench, but if that's what it takes to get the game going, then that's fair enough.
Yeah, it might be something, certainly towards the latter stages of the game where, maybe fitness comes into it, or certainly with not being able to make the changes as the game goes on, that might certainly affect the home team. But it's the first competitive game between the two sides since 1923, as you told me pre-recording. A staple pre-season game. This used to be under Jimmy Calderwood especially, although the last time the Dons did face Peterhead was in 2019 in pre-season, when the Dons came out 2-0 winners. Obviously, this is, as I said, the first competitive game for a very long time. Colin, do you see this game almost as damage limitation from a Peterhead point of view, or is there any belief there that a cup upset could be on the cards?
I think there's always a small belief that you might get a cup upset, especially as it's the first game of the season. And let's be honest, Aberdeen themselves are going through a bit of a transitional period as well. Jim Goodwin's obviously gone in and essentially got rid of almost all the players that Stephen Glass had previously brought in the last summer window. So, it's all up for grabs. It's difficult to kind of assess how each team will play because it is the first game. How will Aberdeen want to play? Will they see it as 4 extra pre-season games? Will they want to try and win the group outright, which I would expect them to do anyway? But it's obviously it'll be interesting how the opening 10, 15, 20 minutes go. But as you said earlier, I think as the game progresses, fitness will obviously come into it. Lack of bodies for Peterhead will mean that we kind of make the changes that maybe Aberdeen will. But we do kind of live in some bit of hope that something might happen.
You're not a football fan if you don't have that bit of hope going into a game. But I suppose from an Aberdeen point of view, it's interesting, the comments you make. Not to sound big-headed or anything, but I do fully expect us to top the group. I think that's what Aberdeen should be aiming to achieve, is topping this group with winning all the games as well. And I think that it's interesting, you say how Aberdeen approach this game in the kind of the opening exchanges, and I would expect Jim Goodwin to have the players treating this game with the utmost respect first and foremost as well, despite, maybe the problems that Peterhead are having going into this game, certainly in terms of players, but be treating it with the same intensity as I would expect us to be treating the opening league game of the season against Celtic. Getting in the faces of Peterhead, trying to stamp our authority on the game early doors. We know what it can be like for Peterhead, especially against Premiership opposition. In this cup, they famously beat Hearts, of course, a few seasons back in this group stage. So it's not going to be a foregone conclusion. A bit of wind and rain up in Peterhead can make all the difference to a game as well. But I think interesting as well, obviously, Aberdeen have got the issues around Yilbur Ramadani, still waiting on his passport. Bojan Miovski as well, still not having his visa and work permit granted, so doubts on whether they'll feature. Could we see Lewis Ferguson returning to the starting 11, or even Christian Ramirez as well from an Aberdeen point of view? As you said, Colin, it's Aberdeen will obviously have the depth that Peterhead don't. Will that be a concern for you? I guess as Peterhead won't want this to turn into a cricket score again. The Dundee game at the weekend, did it have that bit of disappointment, humiliating feel? I know some of the manner of some of the goals were pretty poor.
I think it certainly had the feel of a pre-season game, and when you add in the factor of 3, 4, 5 different trialists were playing, it certainly felt like it was a dead rubber game, if you like. It didn't really have it didn't matter too much. I think Dundee could afford to make 8, 9, 10 changes at half time. And they're a team that's out to impress their new manager, of course, so they want to make their abilities known, stamp their authority, and get that place in the team for the first game. So I think I don't have too much concerns about scores in pre-season friendlies. I think if the manner of the defeats maybe is one thing, but given the fact there was a lot of trialists playing, Jason Brown didn't start because he's obviously suspended for the cup game. So it was an idea to get that back line playing together before before Sunday. But no, I'm maybe too concerned about it. I don't think it will be a cricket score. I don't think it'll be too bad. I think just the fact that we're playing everybody might just lift the players. It might just lift the fans a little bit as well. Just give us that little extra 5-10% that we might need. And unless we honest, I think that all the pressure is going to be on Aberdeen anyway, because I think they've got to be in a hiding to nothing, because they'll be expected to win the group. So if they win the group, we'll say, well, you expected to do that. If they don't win the group, then that's when obviously people will start piling on and saying, well, why have you now beaten Peterhead? Why have you now beaten Dumbarton or Stirling and things like that? So yeah, I think all the pressure's got to be on everybody. So I think it's a case of that if we just hang in there for the first 15-20 minutes and see where it takes us. But I certainly don't think there'll be a cricket score as such. But if we concede early, I think the heads might drop quite quickly.
That's an interesting point, and I didn't mean that comment disrespectfully, and apologies if it came across to anybody tuning in when I made that comment. But it kind of harps from maybe you see the comments on social media, especially Twitter. People have that kind of expectation that Aberdeen will turn up and possibly steamroll or come away with the 3 points, just based on, as we've discussed in this segment, lack of bodies, preparation that Peterhead has been maybe hampered by going into this game. But you're absolutely right. How do Aberdeen approach this game and deal with the pressure? Because 100% the pressure will be on Aberdeen. As you say, the expectation is on Aberdeen to win these games, win the group comfortably, starting on Sunday. We haven't been blessed with being the most naturally creative side. Certainly under Jim Goodwin, we have struggled for that. I think if anyone wants to argue that, then come on down. Even in pre-season, but again, it probably goes back to the points you've made as well. It's just pre-season games. We won't get too hit up on the score lines, but I think that the Bucky game and the St Johnstone game, by all accounts, from what I was told, we still did lack some opportunities in terms of creating chances. So again, if Peterhead can stay in the game in the opening exchanges, it then does become that little bit of a pressure cooker, because it's a sold out away end. They'll be making the trip up, and I don't know, Colin, if you're aware on what sales are like from the home end, but there will be a big crowd. There will be a TV audience tuning in, most likely hoping for an upset as well. So how does Jim Goodwin and the players deal with that pressure? And that for me is the one thing I'm looking to see, how they respond to that.
As I said, I think, and you're right in saying that there has been a lot of people already saying, well, we should be going up there and it should be 5, 6, 7-0, whatever it is, because we don't have any players at the moment. And I think within that crowd, there will be a lot of people who will start to get on the team quite quickly. Within, as I said, the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes, if it remains 0-0, or if everybody are maybe producing the football that you would have maybe expected, that tension then builds even more, and it comes out onto the part of the stands behind the goal. So as I said, I think all the pressure's got to be on Aberdeen. It will be a sellout. I think there's a few tickets still left. Certainly the away end is been sold out, so I would expect the home end to be sold out by Sunday as well. So yeah, there's lots of pressures on, and as you said, TV audience, everybody will be rooting for the home team, you would imagine, and looking for a big upset. But as I said, the pressure is massively on Aberdeen, and if they don't get off to the best start, then we'll see that ramped up quite a bit.
Yeah, so most people that are tuning into this episode will know the players that Aberdeen possess that can cause Peterhead problems. Who do you hope or expect could cause Aberdeen some problems? I've earmarked Ryan Dow, obviously signed in the summer, as someone with the certainly experience of playing against Aberdeen before, that could maybe look to cause us problems, and certainly has that experience that could help the home side. But a player that seemed to, for me, impress last season for Peterhead, after signing from Inverurie Locals was Hamish Ritchie. Just how important is he as a player to Peterhead this season, but also ahead on this match on Sunday?
Well, but because of the players that we've lost, I think Hamish will be our most creative player. He'll be the one that will look to take the ball to his feet, and he'll be the one that will probably dictate the play through the midfield. Very skillful player, likes to take players on, can go right, can go left. So he'll have a trick or two up his sleeve. And as I said, because he's he's not Aberdeen man, but he's up that way. I think it's Arthur kind of direction. I think he is in Drury. He'll be looking to. He'll be keen to impress, as most people will be, because it's a TV. But Jack Brown as well. He's another one that could impress. He's done well since he came in. Again, another one from the Highland League, signed in January. So all these guys are probably vastly unknown to the majority of the people who will be watching it on Sunday. But they're very good players, and they should do well.
Yeah, I suppose you'll be also looking to the experience of Paul Dixon to help the defence under pressure. And as you said pre-recording, hopefully he's had his mistake for the season out of the way now.
Yeah, the massive blunder he made against Dundee, which seemed to go down quite well with the Dundee fans. I couldn't tell you why, but it certainly did. So hopefully that's his one mistake out of the way. Certainly, I was a player that we probably missed last season in terms of experience. We didn't have a lot of experienced players. The ones that we did have were injured quite a lot or suspended. So yeah, he'll bring something different, and hopefully he just brings that little bit of experience and no mistakes at the back, which would be good.
Yeah. Well, Colin, it's been a pleasure catching up with you again. As I said, it's been a long time. Looking ahead to the weekend's game, hopefully it is an enjoyable game for both perspectives as well. Just before we get you to leave the podcast, what is your hopes for Peterhead in the group and your hopes for the season ahead?
I think genuinely, if we can, if we look to try and take the two games at home, the Aberdeen one and the Barton one, I think that's, if we can get something out with those, I think that would be positive. Maybe get something away from home at Raith Rovers, and then look at the Stirling Albion game. I think there's potential to get 6 or 7 points. Obviously, that's not going to be enough to go through. But yeah, I think Jim, he likes to kind of use this as a platform for preparing the side for the league, and doesn't really have it kind of hold it in too much high regard. But yeah, if we can get, as I say, 6 or 7 points out of that, we'll be doing well. In terms of the league, yeah, if we can finish anywhere where we were last season, it is going to be tough. A lot more full-time teams in there again, and like the Kelty coming up as well, with seemingly throwing money at it like nobody's business. So if we can be competitive, get in around 6th or 7th, and just stay away from that bottom 2 spots, would be a good season.
Well, best of luck for the group stage campaign from Monday onwards, and all the best for the league campaign as well. Colin, it's been a pleasure. And for those that may be listening in from Peterhead and also follow the Blue Toon as well as Aberdeen, Colin, where can people listen to your podcast?
So you can listen to the podcast via Podbean or Spotify. We usually record or have our episodes out every Monday, and we'll be starting that again after the League Cup campaign, but in time for the league. So we'll be back again for the new season.
Yeah, that is the Blue Toon podcast, available on the platforms that Colin has mentioned. Colin, absolute pleasure to chat, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you very much.
Well, Callum, that was the thoughts there of Colin Byiers from the Blue Toon podcast, looking ahead to Sunday's trip to Peterhead. We'll come on to the problems that Peterhead face in a second. But is there an expectation going into this weekend that this is really the first of 4 games that we are almost expected to win?
I think so. I would certainly hope that we would go on to get the full 12 points. However, knowing Aberdeen, I know there's probably bound to be at least a slip up in there somewhere. But it is important we do get off to a good start, not only in this campaign, but for the competitive campaign overall. And go on and get that win. Give us a good platform to carry on from as the team sort of keeps building. I suppose it's better than pre-season in a way, but Not a nice place to be, I suppose, when you consider it could have been jetting off elsewhere in Europe. But it is a good platform to set off with, and hopefully we can get off with 4 wins and build that confidence and sort of that togetherness as well, and get the team used to winning, which they weren't so used to last season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose one thing that Colin mentioned is the pressure in this game is all on Aberdeen. You know, Peterhead have got their problems, maybe in a bit of disarray in terms of player recruitment. You know, not the only people in disarray just now. If you look at the Tory government, afternoon Prime Minister, I wrote all these gags before he decided to resign, so I'm having to get them out. But how important it is that Aberdeen handle that pressure in the right manner, because if it is, you know, I think I said to Colin, if it is, you know, say still 0-0 after 20 minutes, there might be a few moans and groans coming from that away end, which I'm sure will be boozy for some people this coming Sunday.
Yeah, and I'm also sure that there will be some moans and groans if things aren't sort of starting to go our way come that 20-minute mark. Obviously on TV as well, everyone tuning in will be hoping for us to mess it up and then sort of send us into some sort of spiraling chaos that we tend to do at times. Massive pressure. Obviously, it's maybe favourable in terms of the fact, you know, they're League One opposition, sort of mid-table in that league as well. But regardless, away from home, I'm sure they'll have a good crowd as well. And with the pressure on TV and given how bad we were last season, it's a big one. It's a big one. It's important to get that first win nice and early on. And as I said, give us a platform. But hopefully we can get a nice early goal to settle some nerves. That would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we do get a resounding win, I'm sure not only your optimism, but Mark Leslie's optimism will continue to grow. Not getting carried away, but we're definitely winning the treble. And I think that's what you'll be singing as well come full time if we do win the game. But I suppose we shouldn't really get caught up in Peterhead's recruitment issues. Obviously not having a goalkeeper signed up as it stands isn't ideal for them, but I'm sure they'll have someone lined up come Sunday. We've really just got to focus on our own job in hand. But I suppose maybe the fact that we're still reluctant to keep clean sheets might give Peterhead and Jim McInally something to hold on to, that if they can find themselves a way into the game, that they've got something to maybe protect if worst case from our point of view, they were to take the lead.
Absolutely. I think our recent defensive records would be enough to give anyone confidence, regardless of who the opposition is. I suppose Peterhead will probably try and stay in the game as long as possible and hit us on the counter-attack, essentially. And obviously, Colin mentioned a few creative players of their own that could be capable of making something happen. Hamish Ritchie and Jack Brown, most notably. But it is, that's why I mentioned that early goal is very important for us, because even against Peterhead, or regardless of the opposition, no disrespect, I've still got no confidence that we will actually keep a clean sheet, which is quite a ridiculous position to be in at this stage. But hopefully, not only we can get the win to set us up for this rest of the season, but also a clean sheet. I think the confidence that would do for the defence and for the fans in the new centre half certainly as well. I think that could do us the world of good.
Yeah, for me, that would be the biggest takeaway, is if we could come away from this game with a clean sheet and a win, of course, is that not only are you building confidence throughout the team, but you're also starting it from a defence that struggled to do that last season, and a couple of goals for players as well to give them confidence as we approach the start of the Premiership season as well. Colin, as I alluded to, the probably expectation, certainly from the majority of Aberdeen fans, is to come through this group with 4 wins from 4. There'll be a few that won't accept anything less. I probably include myself in that as well. How far do you expect, or how far do you hope Aberdeen go in this cup competition? Obviously, probably the cups are our best opportunity to win silverware, as much as we'd like to see us win the league. So obviously we've got to treat it with the utmost respect. We've failed at the first hurdle the last 2 seasons. What's your hopes for this cup competition in particular?
I think, although getting back to Hampden, it's not winning a trophy, it would certainly show signs of progression in the right direction. So if we can do that and other things go well elsewhere, we certainly see improvement in the league, looking towards qualifying for Europe and things like that, then I would probably be happy. Not happy, but content with that in terms of we're moving the right way as opposed to last season, given how bad we were in cup competitions and just in general. And still early days, I suppose, with Jim Gooden as well. As he said, it sort of might take 3 windows to get the squad where he wants it to be. I think I would take that. Hopefully, it would be at a final. Also, it's a nice trip to Hampden for all of us to enjoy, regardless. But steps in the right direction. I'm gonna really try and not put all the pressure on and say we're winning the lot yet. So I'll stick with that. A semi-final, moving in the right way.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've gotten down as well. I expect us to get to the semi-final as a minimum. And the last 2 times that we've reached the semi-final in the last 6 seasons, we've gone on to reach the final. But the less said about those 2 finals, the better. But, it's probably kind of on the same level that you've discussed, where it would be a step in the right direction. I think we really should be aiming for the final in itself. But, if we were at least given that we haven't even progressed past the first hurdle in the last 2 seasons that I mentioned, if we can get ourselves back to Hampden, as we've seen before, anything can happen on its day. You just think back to the last time we had that semi-final at Hampden in this particular cup competition. It was on a Sunday. There wasn't many of us there at Hampden. We very much upset the odds thanks to Lewis Ferguson bulleting home that header. Who says we don't put positive memories on this show?
Exactly.
But definitely, if we can get that bit of a cup run going, because I think last season as well, not only was it turgid in terms of our league campaign, but it wasn't helped that we didn't have anything else to look forward to because we had no cup run on top of that. So sometimes these cups can be a welcome distraction if the league form isn't up to scratch as well. So I would like to see us go deep in the League Cup. But obviously we've got to still get through the group stages. As I said to Colin, we've seen Peterhead cause upsets against Premiership teams previously at Balmoor. So obviously we don't want to put ourselves on that list of teams as well. We need to treat each of these group stage games with the utmost respect starting on Sunday. But hopefully we can do that, and then we can see where that takes us afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I was at the game against that they played against Hearts, so more than well aware of what they are capable of. So we do really need to be very careful. And I've just seen a comment that came in there that was not very nice. Should I bring it up just so people know why I'm laughing?
Yeah. And good to see Theo's obviously still hurting from that defeat to Peterhead.
I know, exactly. So hopefully we can put them in their place. It'll be good to put Hearts in their place throughout the season, but to start off with a win against Peterhead at Balmoor, something they couldn't do, would be excellent. But as I say, let's not get too carried away. We need to get through these group stages, and hopefully we'll get through them unscathed with positive performances and results and clean sheets.
Yeah, clean sheets being the operative, I think. But we'll be back next week to look back at the opening competitive game of the season against Peterhead. We might, depending on our schedule, try and get an episode out before Wednesday's game against Dumbarton, if time allows for both of us, a wee preview of that game as well. If not, we'll be back towards the back end of next week, looking back at both games, and we'll see how those have gone. Hopefully we're 2 from 2, Callum, and hopefully 2 clean sheets as well.
Absolutely. Some nice goal difference would be good, just for a change.
Yeah, absolutely. So enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the Peterhead game for those of you that are going, or enjoy watching if you can't make the game. And until next time, we'll see